We had talked about our experience from early childhood, and the prequels hit right at our early adulthood.
Right. We were, I guess, 2021 when they came out.
Yeah.
And you and I went to see those together. But probably
And look, I'll be honest. I know that like today, people look back on them, they analyze them, and they point out all of the obvious flaws in the storytelling and movie making there.
Right.
And I understand the problems that people have with, look, the whole thing is on green screen. There's very little practical effects involved. At the time Episode 1 came out, it was the greatest thing ever.
It was
I
awesome.
saw it 5 times in the theater.
Yeah, because we had, for the first time in so many years, we had new Jedi.
Yeah.
We had a young Obi-Wan. And then, Qui-Gon, and it's...
I still remember the opening night. Of course, it was the midnight showing.
Oh, yeah.
We waited in line, and your brothers was with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember discussing this with your brother. Like, we were sitting in the theater waiting on the movie to start, and we were just talking about different things. And we were just saying, like, why have you never seen anybody get stabbed with a lightsaber? They never use the lightsaber to stab. It's always swinging. And in the very opening scene of The Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon stabs the lightsaber into the door and starts melting it. And both of us were like, what? We were just talking about that.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, every little thing about it, and even thinking about that and the way I was feeling this when we saw it the first time, I don't know if we'll ever get that again, because I remember being in that crowd, and as soon as the Lucasfilm logo pops up, everybody cheers.
It was,
and it's like you're at a concert or something.
It was like that. It was, and then after it was over with, and even considering, the hindsight of it, there was applause in the theater. At the beginning there was applause, and at the end credits there were applause.
Yeah,
there was applause, and it was.
I still remember
it was fun.
Episode 2,
mm-hmm.
when Yoda whips out the lightsaber,
mm-hmm.
and Yoda and Dooku have the lightsaber fight. Look, it's the corniest thing ever, and it's the most ham-fisted way to lead up to it, where they're both using the Force powers to throw things around. Right. And then finally Dooku says something like, it's obvious that our skills in the Force are not going to, or we cannot decide this by using our skills with the Force, but with our, skills with the lightsaber or whatever.
Right.
And it's like the most ham-fisted line ever. And then...
But it was awesome.
Yeah, but I remember being in the theater, and when Yoda pulls the robe away and pulls the lightsaber over to his hand with the Force,
right,
and then ignites it, and everybody in the whole place is like,
yeah, because we'd never seen that yet.
Even though it's the silliest thing ever, and looking back at it now, it doesn't make any sense. And
well,
it looks crazy to watch him flip around, and I know it's all CGI,
of course.
And then you have poor Christopher Lee is like probably just doing his thing, thinking maybe in post all this would be an awesome scene.
Right. Yeah. You kind of feel bad for him, especially at that point in time, because he was doing that and Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And he was fantastic in both of them.
Yeah.
But I remember that scene. I remember sitting there, and as soon as you see Yoda's shadow walking toward where Dooku was, there was applause then.
Yeah.
And there was just the little gasp of excitement because you knew what was about to happen. And then there were people clapping before it even started.
Well, and like I said, my outlook on movies, when I'm watching a movie, I am not thinking anything critically about it. Usually I'm just enjoying what I'm watching. So I'm not thinking of plot holes in the story, or this character's decision didn't make any sense in this situation. I'm not thinking about those things while I'm watching.
Unless it's just blatantly obvious.
The Last Jedi.
Jupiter Ascending.
Well, yeah, Jupiter. And I still haven't seen that. I'm going to have to watch it just to see how bad it is.
Yeah, it was terrible.
And honestly, The Last Jedi was one of the first movies, probably the first movie I've ever watched, where the first time I saw it, I was thinking about, well, that didn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is before I ever watched the movie, I went ahead and watched all the reviews.
Right.
I just couldn't wait. So that may be part of that. But, I go back and I don't suggest that the kids go watch this, but Red Letter Media has amazing reviews and analysis of the prequel trilogy. Now it has horrible language throughout, so I don't think it's for children or even really for anybody that doesn't like to hear that language. But the pure analysis of the prequels is spot on. They go through everything from the narrative to character progression, the different things, and they compare it back with the original trilogy and say, now look, in the original trilogy, look at the quality of the writing and the narrative, and then compare that to what you see in the prequels.
Right.
So that, there is a step down in quality when it comes to some of the technical aspects.
Right.
But
See,
I'll still watch the prequel trilogy.
Well, I'll be honest. It's been hard to try to go back and watch those. I tried. I was sitting with Courtney one day, and I can't remember where we were. We were with a group of people, and it came on. Episode 1, Phantom Menace, came on, and I told Courtney, hey, you need to watch this, because she may not have been the biggest fan of the original trilogy, but it was enough where she liked it. At least a little, and we're sitting there watching it, and that kid and Jar Jar,
yeah,
and everything else. You have this awesome villain with the dual-bladed lightsaber, and then you have Jar Jar.
Well,
and then you have the kid that is.
That's the thing for me. Is like I tend to focus on the Jedi and the lightsaber battles and all that. And yeah, the kid's annoying. Jar Jar's annoying. And I remember watching, I can't remember which documentary it was I was watching about Lucas making the prequel trilogy, but it has a clip of him telling one of his associates, like, he's saying, look, Jar Jar's the key to this whole thing. If we can get Jar Jar working, then I'm thinking,
mercy.
Why are you focused on that? And I'm sure that a big part of it is we could sell toys of that guy.
Well, here's the thing. Had they made Jar Jar, and again, this is just kind of a hindsight thing. I feel like the casting of the child was one that was terrible. And it's not to say anything bad about the kid. I understand he's had some adult issues since he's grown up, but I feel like it was just the casting was not very good, because of the fact that 3 years later you have first of all you have somebody that's 3 feet tall, and then 3 years later you have somebody who's 7 feet tall, and I understand growth spurts, but that's kind of ridiculous, and then had they made it where Jar Jar and the Gungan people in general, they made Jar Jar look stupid. And had you not had, and he could have still been this comedy element to it, which is I think what they were going for,
without being slapstick.
Yeah. Now that said, they were talking about how there's a theory about how Jar Jar was a Sith Lord all along, which is, if you ever have a chance to look it up.
That goes back to my theory about how fan theories are always better than the people actually making the movies can come up with.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, as many hijinks as Jar Jar went through, and how many accidents he had and came out the other side of it okay and unscathed, it's very possible that
it makes sense.
It really does.
All that was on purpose.
Can somebody actually be that clumsy and not die? I don't know. But that's, I don't know. I just feel like, the casting of the kid was bad. It was a poor decision. And I understand maybe why they went with somebody that young, to show, once again, we're talking about the character progression.
Yeah.
You have somebody this young and this innocent, and you want to like the kid, except he's so annoying. You want to like him, and you want to pull for him, and then later on you see how he grows, and what he becomes, but he's almost just not believable.
Yeah.
While I'm sitting here watching it with Courtney, I can tell that my face is getting red because of those two characters.
Yeah.
And they ruined, in my opinion, that film. Qui-Gon was awesome. He was great.
Yeah, the dynamic between Jedi Master and Padawan and some of the conversations they have with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, that same type of dynamic or that type of relationship is not there with Obi-Wan and Anakin in the next few episodes. It's a different, it's almost like a petulant child.
It is. But I think that may be the point, though. They may have done that on purpose.
I knew why they were doing that.
Right.
I knew that they wanted you to be thinking about, look, this guy's going to be Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. And they want you to see, like, his not really getting along with authority or getting along with this side of things, and why he would turn to Palpatine, for anything. But I feel like there was a better way or a different attitude that he could have displayed besides that type of petulance,
Mm-hmm. Right, I agree.
Or just like a teenager just disagreeing with everything Daddy says.
Right.
That was kind of what you got from episode 2 and even some of 3.
Yeah, well, the whole time, episodes 2 and 3, again, you talk about the main difference in Anakin is his hair between those two. And I tend to agree with that, is that, in 2 and 3, he still acts like he's a spoiled child. And it was a spoiled child with force powers.
Yeah.
And I feel like he was made to be stronger than maybe even Luke. But
and he
didn't get that.
He has that attitude that, well, I'm better than everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you holding me back? That's kind of his attitude throughout those, especially episode 2. Why are you holding me back? I'm better than this.
Now, I will say that probably I really enjoyed, like, General Grievous. He was fun.
Yeah.
He was a cool villain because of the fact that, he's the Jedi Slayer.
Well, and I enjoyed the fight between Obi-Wan and him. Mm-hmm. But now looking back at it now, you think logically about it, like Obi-Wan would have been sliced to pieces.
I don't know. And this goes back to this whole reading a novel that goes along with the film. And like I said, you know what? It was the final film. Now that I'm thinking about, I'm thinking about the novel. In that film, it talks about, Obi-Wan. He's a humble person.
Yeah.
Even from the beginning, and he's. When it's just Obi-Wan and Yoda left, those are the only 2 Jedi left. Well, they're not the only 2 left, but they're the only 2 that are still on the grid, so to speak, or that the reader and the viewer is aware of. Yoda talks about how accomplished Obi-Wan was, and it wasn't so much because of his ability, like Mace Windu. Mace Windu, he created his own fighting style. Same thing with Qui-Gon. And Obi-Wan, he didn't create his own style, but he perfected the ones that were already established.
Yeah.
And so it talks about how his strengths there. And so I don't know. I feel like he was pretty good. Overall, he might be one of my favorite characters throughout the series.
Well, and you talk about fighting styles.
Mm-hmm.
You see a difference in each of the trilogies.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, obviously you didn't have a lot of choreography back in the late 70s and early
Right.
80s. I mean, they were just swinging laser swords.
And I feel like that was one of the things that really drew us in, especially in the prequel trilogy, was the fact that you actually get a duel.
Yeah, there were plenty of problems with the stories and problems with the movie making technicalities, but the choreography, even though I know it's choreography with the saber battles, they just looked cool.
Right.
And especially Darth Maul in the first one.
Right.
Everything about that double-sided saber, that's something we hadn't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And then to watch Obi-Wan take him out, the way he did. That's one of my favorite scenes in all of the Star Wars movies is after Qui-Gon is killed. Spoilers.
Right. Yes,
after Qui-Gon is killed and Obi-Wan comes and just thrashes Darth Maul.
And that goes back to how strong Obi-Wan actually was. And he's, like I said, he as far as his ability in the Force, he was, I feel like, as much of a fanaticized character that he is, I feel like he was underrated.
Yeah, especially Ewan McGregor version.
Absolutely.
Seeing his the different battles he was in. Of course, he defeated Darth Maul, and then of course Episode 3. Of course, Dooku seemed to be completely OP against Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Right.
But then like the battle with Anakin in Episode 3, of course that one is another one that's highly choreographed and lasts for 5 hours.
Right.
And at the time you're watching it, you're not thinking about, look, this should be over by now. You're just enjoying every second of it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Looking back at it, you're like, yeah, this probably goes on a little bit too long.
Right.
But
every Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. But every trilogy has a completely different style of saber battle. So you got basically just swinging laser swords in the first one. You have some highly choreographed, amazing looking battles in the prequels. And then in Episode 7 and Episode 8, it looks a little more raw. And I understand that the point is maybe that Rey especially is just kind of picking this up.
Right.
And so you're not going to have kind of a highly civilized fight style between the two of them.
Let me ask you a question.
the big thing about The Last Jedi that everybody's like, oh, that's amazing, was the throne room. And
I got bones to pick about that as well. But
I didn't think that as far as the fight itself, I didn't think it was that good as far as the fighting style or the choreography. I felt like there's a lot to be desired. Part of that is I've seen the prequel trilogy.
Right. Well, okay. Kind of going back to the prequel trilogy. I'm going to throw a question at you, and I'll throw it out to the audience as well, just to see what they think, and they can leave us some comments and argue if they want to. At the end of the prequel trilogy, you had Obi-Wan that goes after Anakin, and you have Yoda that goes after Sidious.
Yeah.
And naturally, those are the pairings that you have in mind when you think of, okay, those are the people that have to fight. What if they had swapped?
Obi-Wan and Sidious?
Right. And Yoda and Anakin.
Depends. If we're just talking about saber battles, I feel like Obi-Wan could have taken Sidious, just saber fighting style. But Sidious's overall force power, it doesn't seem like Obi-Wan has as much power when it comes to force lightning or the other things that they can do with the force.
Perhaps, but my thought is that Obi-Wan was, in my opinion, more powerful than Mace Windu. And Mace Windu had Sidious down.
I don't know. Mace Windu's pretty powerful too.
He was.
Of course, most of what you see of his abilities, you see in the Clone Wars cartoon.
Right.
And so as far as like what you see in the movies, like I said, I don't think Palpatine is that skilled with a saber. He has a peculiar style.
Right.
And that's another thing that you kind of notice in episode 7 is Rey's style initially is that stabbing. It's a little bit like Palpatine.
Yeah. Just
and that's why some people were saying, well, maybe that's her lineage or whatever. There's all kinds of theories there.
We can talk some of those theories in a little bit.
But
I feel like Yoda could have taken Anakin. Anakin was stronger, and I feel like that Yoda was maybe more agile.
Well, I mean, look at all the flips.
Right. I know. And I feel like
the thing is, Obi-Wan or Yoda, Obi-Wan did take Anakin, and Yoda could have as well. Maybe Yoda could have even been more effective against the Emperor. I'm not sure what he was doing there. It doesn't look like he was actually trying to kill the Emperor or anything like that. But you're right. Mace Windu had him beaten, had him down, and if not for Anakin intervening, that would have been that.
Right.
And I still feel. I understand what you're saying about Lucas saying that Luke was the most powerful ever, but Obi-Wan makes a good case.
Yes, he does. Yeah, I agree. That's and especially when you go back and you read the companion novel for the last of the prequel trilogy.
Talking about the prequel trilogy, I have a mug here.
Yeah.
This side of the mug is original trilogy.
Right.
And this side of the mug is prequel trilogy.
Nice. Now you just need to add something on top for the new trilogy.
Yeah, maybe I can get a lid for like the sequel trilogy.
Hey, nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Travel lid.
Mine is actually, I don't know if you guys have noticed or not, but we've got a lot of Jedi stuff all over the place. We're all Star Wars today. Mine's actually a Jedi Knight coffee mug. And it says Legendary Defenders of the Republic. So maybe they're in cahoots with Voltron.
Nice. Legendary Defenders.
Yeah.
How awesome would that be? That kind of crossover.
Oh, that'd be so cool. That would be cool.
What kind of evil would require a Voltron Jedi team up?
That's good.
We may have to think on that one.
Yeah.
We'll put that out to the listeners. Email us if you can think of an evil force that requires both Voltron and the Jedi.
Have you seen the? You could read a Repulsa from Power Rangers.
Well, okay. Well, now we're doing even more crossing over.
Yeah. Have you? There's. I want to say I can't remember if it's. It may be Screw Attack or I can't remember, but they actually did a.
They're usually the ones that do the verses.
Yeah, it was like
the off the wall verses.
No, but they're so fun. They did I think it was a Voltron and Megazord, Voltron versus Megazord fight.
I didn't see that one, but surely Voltron won.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
just making sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you look at the original trilogy, late 70s, early 80s. Obviously, there's some charm there that's going to last forever as far as the technology of the time and the way that they lovingly crafted all those models and the way they filmed it to make it all look life-size. It's just crazy what they were able to do there. And then you have this trilogy, which is all computers, basically.
Right.
And you have actors acting in front of a green screen and they're just being told, like, this is what kind of room you're in or this is what situation you're in. And they're just imagining. And even many of the characters that they're interacting with are all computer generated. And they're just telling them, imagine that this character's in front of you or they're this tall and you're looking up to this little dot and imagining that you're talking to a character that you haven't even seen yet. And so it's all CGI.
Right. And I just thought of another thing. Think about, you talk about character progression. Think about Yoda in the early trilogy. How when we first see Yoda, when we're very first introduced to Yoda, he's this silly little bouncing Hobbit thing.
Right.
And he's laughing all the time. It's almost like he's crazy. But then you have in the prequel trilogy, he's very solemn and serious all the time.
He's Jedi Master and General of the Force, and
right. And that's the thing. And he's just almost a completely different character.
General of the Fighting Force, not the Force.
Right.
General of the Clone Troopers.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.